There was once a young woman who felt as if her entire world had shattered into broken pieces. On the day she lost the person she loved most, something inside her cracked irreparably. In the weeks that followed, she wandered through her days like a ghost, the vibrant colors of life dulled into a monochrome haze. Each morning she awoke with a weight on her chest, a silent ache that made every breath a conscious effort. She would stare at the ceiling in the pre-dawn darkness, feeling nothing but the hollow numbness where joy used to reside. In her heart, she carried an invisible wound. It wasn't visible to the outside world. She still forced a polite smile when necessary, still said, "I'm fine" when concerned friends asked how she was doing. But inside, she felt like a vase that had been knocked off a shelf and shattered, pieces scattered everywhere, never to be whole in the same way again. Memories of happier times cut into her like shards of glass. A laugh shared over a morning coffee, a warm hand in hers on an evening walk. Now these images only brought pain, reminders of what was lost. She tried to push the memories away, to bury them deep, but they surfaced in quiet moments, bringing tears she thought she had no more strength to cry. At night, when the world was silent, she would curl up in bed and let the sorrow wash over her. In the stillness, there was no need to pretend. She could be broken. She could whisper into the darkness all the words she never got to say, apologies and I love yous and goodbyes that came too late. The grief came in waves. Some nights a gentle tide of sadness, other nights a storm that threatened to drown her. On those stormy nights, she wondered if the pain would ever end, if her heart would ever feel anything but emptiness. Days turned into weeks, and weeks into months. Winter arrived, and with it came long, cold nights that seemed to mirror the chill in her soul. She spent evenings wrapped in a blanket by the window, watching snow fall quietly under the streetlights. Each snowflake drifted to the ground softly, joining the pure white sheet covering the world. In that stillness, she felt a strange kinship with the winter landscape, both of them frozen, suspended in time. The world outside was muffled and still, just as her inner world felt silent and empty. Yet, even in winter, there were moments of unexpected beauty. One night, as she sat by the window with a mug of tea in her trembling hands, she noticed how the ice crystals on the glass caught the moonlight. They sparkled like tiny stars etched in the window pane. For the first time in weeks, she felt something other than pain, a flicker of awe at the delicate patterns nature had created from her breath on the cold glass. It was a tiny moment, over in an instant, but it broke through her numbness just a little. She found herself reaching out to trace a finger along the intricate frost, feeling the cold nip at her skin. In that moment, she realized that even in her sorrow, the world still held small wonders. As the months passed, she began to venture outside herself. It started simply, a short walk around the block on a crisp morning, just to feel the cold air on her face. The first time, she had to force herself out the door, wrapping her coat tight as if it could shield her from the world. But each day she tried again, and the walk grew a bit longer. She noticed the way her boots crunched on the snow, and the sound somehow comforted her, proof that she was still here, still moving forward one step at a time, even if she carried her grief with her. One afternoon, she found herself at a small park where children were sledding down a gentle hill. She sat on a bench, pulling her hat down over her ears, and watched them squeal with laughter as they slid down and tumbled into the powdery snow. Their joy was simple and pure. She felt an ache watching them, a mix of sorrow and a longing to feel that kind of lightness again. But she didn't turn away. She let herself feel that ache fully, tears warming her cheeks in the cold air, and strangely, it felt cleansing. The laughter of those children, the glow in their rosy cheeks, it reminded her of a time before her loss, when she too felt safe and happy. Instead of shutting the memory out, she held it gently, deciding perhaps it was okay to remember the warmth even if it hurt. In the following weeks, she continued returning to that park. She would bring a book, though often she scarcely read it. Instead, she found herself gazing up at the sky, or watching the bare trees waiting patiently for spring. Sometimes a neighbor's dog would bound up to her, tail wagging, and she would pet its soft fur and feel a spark of affection stir within her. These small encounters, fleeting as they were, became like drops of water to a withered plant. Slowly, very slowly, she felt life returning to her soul. Healing, she learned, was not a linear path. It was not a journey with a clear destination or a date by which she must get over it. It was more like a slow sunrise, darkness gradually giving way to light, almost imperceptibly at first. Some days she would catch herself smiling at a stray thought or humming a tune while boiling water for tea, and realize that for that moment the grief had loosened its grip. Other days she would be ambushed by a wave of sadness without warning, and that was okay too. She let the grief come and go, like the weather. She began to trust that just as a heavy snow eventually melts into spring, her sorrow would eventually ease in its own time. Spring did come, as it always does. The snow thawed, revealing tender green shoots pushing up through the damp earth. She walked through the park and saw buds on the trees, little promises of life ready to bloom again. One bright morning, as she passed a flower bed, she noticed the first crocuses breaking through, purple and gold petals opening bravely to the sun. She knelt to touch one gently, and she realized she was smiling. It struck her that the world was coming alive again, and somehow so was she. She still carried the memory of her loss with her everywhere. That hadn't changed, but it no longer felt like a gaping wound. It had become more like a scar. The pain had carved itself into her, yes, but in healing, it had left a mark that would always be a part of her story. She understood now that the scar wasn't a sign of weakness or brokenness. It was a symbol of what she had survived. Like the healed-over bark of a tree that had once been struck by lightning, it told a story of pain, but also of resilience and recovery. One afternoon, she returned to the little cafe where she used to go with the person she lost. This was something she had avoided for a long time. The thought of all those memories held in one place had been too overwhelming, but on this day she felt ready. She took a deep breath and stepped inside. The familiar bell chimed on the door. The smell of coffee and vanilla greeted her, and for a moment, memories flooded in. There they were, two friends huddled in a corner booth on a rainy day, laughing over shared secrets, two pairs of hands around warm mugs, fingers occasionally touching. Her chest tightened, and she felt tears pool in her eyes. She almost turned around to leave, but then the barista, who recognized her, gave a gentle smile and said, "It's been a while. It's good to see you again." Something in that simple kindness steadied her. She nodded, wiping her eyes, and ordered her usual drink. She sat in that corner booth, alone this time, and let the memories come. They played in her mind like an old film, bittersweet but also precious. "Yes," she cried quietly for a time, mourning again all that was gone. But when the tears subsided, what remained was a gentle calm. She found that along with the sadness, there was gratitude. Gratitude for having experienced those moments of love and warmth at all. They were a part of her, ingrained in her very being, and nothing, not even death or distance, could take them away. In that realization, her heart felt a little more whole. Before she left the cafe, she took out a small notebook she had started to carry and wrote a few lines. They weren't profound, just her own thoughts. "I am healing. I carry my past with me, but it does not weigh me down anymore. It gives me strength." She left a generous tip and thanked the barista earnestly, stepping back out into the spring sunshine. The air smelled of new blossoms, and carried the sound of birds singing in the trees. She closed her eyes and took a long, deep breath, letting the fresh air fill her lungs. In that breath, she felt something shift inside her, a release of some kind. She knew she would be okay. Not just okay, but eventually happy again, different but whole. The scar of her loss would remain, but it was no longer just a reminder of pain. It had become a reminder of her strength, her capacity to love deeply and to survive great loss. She had been broken, yes, but in putting herself back together piece by piece, she had discovered a new sense of self, one that was shaped by grief but not defined by it, one that had cracks, perhaps, but those cracks allowed new light to fill her up. As she walked home, she noticed the sky had never looked so blue. Each step felt lighter than the last, as if invisible burdens were falling off her shoulders. She stopped by the park one more time. The children were there again, chasing each other in a game of tag, their laughter ringing like little bells. She watched them for a while, and this time she smiled not with longing, but with a quiet joy. Life, she realized, was offering its beauty to her again, and she was finally ready to accept it. By the time she reached her door, the sun was dipping low, painting the horizon in hues of orange and pink. She paused, key in hand, and looked at the sunset. It was breathtaking. Tears brimmed in her eyes once more, but these were different tears, not of grief, but of appreciation. She whispered a thank you, to no one in particular, or perhaps to the universe, or to the person she lost, whose love had helped shape her into who she was. Thank you for the memories, for the love, for the strength to carry on. In that moment, she felt a quiet peace settle in her heart. She unlocked the door and stepped inside, greeted by the silence of her cozy apartment. It struck her that this silence no longer felt so empty. It felt safe, like a space where she could grow. She put the kettle on to make a cup of tea and realized she was humming that tune again, the same one that had come to her mind in bits and pieces these past weeks. Only now did she recognize it. It was a lullaby her mother used to sing to her when she was a child, whenever she woke from a bad dream. Without thinking, she found herself singing the soft melody into the quiet of her home, her voice steady and warm. And as she sang, she knew that the worst of the storm had passed. She had made it through the long winter of her sorrow. Spring had arrived within her, slowly and quietly, but undeniably. The wounds in her heart had begun to knit into scars, and those scars, rather than marks of brokenness, were proof of her healing. In her reflection on the window, she saw a woman who had endured pain and found the courage to live on. She saw someone who was not unscathed, but who was whole in a new way, a person remade by her experience, with deeper compassion and understanding. The journey of healing had changed her. She knew there would still be rainy days and occasional lonely nights. But she also knew now that pain can coexist with hope, and that healing doesn't mean forgetting. It means carrying forward the love and lessons, even as we move beyond the pain. With her cup of tea in hand, she stood by the window one last time that evening, watching the first stars appear in the twilight sky. The night was calm, and so was she. In that calm, she finally found what she thought she had lost forever, a sense of peace and wholeness within herself. The broken pieces of her heart had been reassembled into something new, something strong. The scar that remained was not a burden. It was a testament to her journey, a badge of survival and growth. In time, she would see that scar and smile, remembering not just the pain of what she lost, but the resilience of what she found in herself. And as the stars winked into existence above, she realized that she was going to be all right, that after all the darkness, she had discovered light within her once more.